So this weird image of Batgirl standing in a bathroom has been making its way around the internet lately, and somebody pointed it out to me, and I thought as I looked at it that this would make a great subject for another installment of Why Modern Comics Suck. So let's take a look at this image. Now, this image kind of reminds me of when you would get a coloring book or an activity book, and there'd be the photograph, and you had to find all the things wrong with the photograph. So let's go ahead and play that game with this. So first, and probably most obvious, is I don't understand how Barbara Gordon gets in or out of this room, being that the door to the bathroom is located behind the toilet or the bathtub. The bathtub is literally just affixed to the wall that has the door. So that door can't open, and even if it could, there's a nasty, dirty plunger right in the middle of the room that would surely be knocked over by the door opening up. Now, Barbara Gordon, to my understanding, lives in a tiny apartment in the middle of downtown Gotham, and her bathroom here looks like it's the size of most people's two-car garages. So that last one may be a bit nitpicky, but come on now. Seriously, where was the quality control when somebody handed this page in? I mean, yeah, the perspective looks okay for the most part. It looks a little bit wonky on one side that I can see. But, so technically you could say it's at least competently composed, but at the same time, this bathroom can't exist in reality. And this has become kind of part and parcel to a large elephant in the room when it comes to talking about modern comics, which is the artwork in comic books today. Now, I don't think there's a better example out there than Captain Marvel. Now, Captain Marvel is a character that has been struggling to really find the place that I think Marvel wants her to have. They clearly want this character to be a very prominent central figure to their comic book line. They want this character to come to mind as easily Captain America, Spider-Man, Thor, Iron Man when you think of Marvel. They want Captain America Captain Marvel shoulder to shoulder with those other characters. But I don't know that there is a single character in comic books that is more inconsistently and horribly drawn than Carol Danvers. So, and here, this is a fun meme that I found, but at the same time, it demonstrates it exactly. You're looking at a cover image versus interior art image. They always give Captain Marvel fantastic cover artists. Terry Dodson's done it for a while. I believe that Carlos Pacheco was her cover artist for a while. So she's had a lot of good artists behind her, but then you flip through the panels of the page or the book, and this is what you see. And whether it's an artist who is just drawing in a rush, I know there's been some who just don't want her to look like the typical female character. Whatever the reason is, I don't understand why a character who Marvel wants to be so prominently displayed and prominently made as a central character is going to be drawn so consistently off model and horrible. It's like they purposely make her look unattractive, and it's not just restricted to artists that are kind of subpar. This last image here was turned in by someone who I regard as a really good artist. I don't know how this slipped through, but it did. I mean, it's like people have forgotten that comic books are supposed to be a visual medium. The pictures are supposed to what draw you in to when you see the book on the shelf, and then you pick it up and you read it, and the story keeps you there. But if the artwork's not compelling and it's not interesting, I mean, what are we going to do with it? Today's comic art is low effort. It's just weak. It's not dynamic. It's technically flawed. I could go on and on and on. When I first started collecting comic books, the artwork was insane. I used to actually be excited to go to the comic book store every week just to see the imagery that I was going to get out of the comic books that I bought that were just would blow my mind. Things that I didn't think a human being could possibly draw with their hand would be on these pages, and it was insane to me. It created and cultivated the love of the medium and the art of comic books. I mean, it was stylized, it was dynamic, the characters were larger than life, it was super detailed, it was just well done. I mean, now you go into a comic shop and the artwork you see, I mean, there's still good stuff out there, there's still good artists working, but for the most part, man, you're finding more and more that a well-drawn comic is just a diamond in the rough. And a lot of people would like to just blame the artists that are out there. They're just hiring people that don't have what it takes to work in comics industry. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think the problem is the artist working in comics. I think the problem is an editorial problem. Now, for those of you who may remember, it was just a few years ago that DC Comics cleaned house, all their editors, got rid of all their senior editors, and brought in a lot of people who, to be fair, were criticized for not having the necessary experience to edit mainstream DC Comics, and their workloads were off the charts hard. And I understand, it seems like in the comic book industry right now, one of the ways that they're trying to find to cut costs is in the editor. And they're either taking a good editor and just giving them more work than they can realistically handle and do a good job with, or they're bringing in people who they can pay a low salary to, who probably don't have the skill and probably don't have the ability to do the job that's being asked of them. And I remember back in my comic book history, back in the days of Marvel, there used to be an editor, Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter oversaw arguably the best season of Marvel. So under his watch, you had the Chris Claremont, John Byrne X-Men run, which gave us Dark Phoenix, the Hellfire Club, all that good stuff. You had Secret Wars, one of the best consistent runs on Spider-Man, the Walt Simonson era of Thor. Marvel just fired under all cylinders under Jim Shooter, and that's because Jim Shooter was good at his job. And not only was Jim Shooter good at his job, but he had an insane eye for detail. If you turned in something that he felt was subpar, he let you know it, and he would send you back to the drawing board, and he would keep doing it until you got it right to his standards. This was such a trait with him that eventually he became so tyrannical with it that the artists and writers under Marvel kind of led a coup and got him ousted, because he kind of let that grip of his get a little too tight. And, artists are still creative people, and at the end of the day, they don't want to be ruled with an iron fist. But at the same time, a good editor would have taken a look at an image like this bathroom and probably would have sent this back to the artist with a big red circle around this door that can't be opened, and maybe an editor's note. Her bathroom would be smaller. She lives in a tiny apartment. So I don't know if editors are just too afraid to give these type notes back to their artists, or what it is, or if the artists just aren't working fast enough to implement the changes, in which case, you're going to have to work that artist or tell that artist he needs to work faster. But this is what an editor is supposed to do. You're not there to be friends with the artist. You're not there to give them a space to work and do whatever you want. You're there to make sure a good comic book gets put out. And an editor is going to look at this artwork and execute some quality control. And if he sees a room that can't possibly function, or a face that looks derpy, then they're going to send it back to the artist. A good editor will anyway, and say, hey, this isn't acceptable. This isn't up to standard. You need to draw this again. And the artist needs to be sure that they're still working under a deadline, and they have given themselves enough time to implement whatever corrections that need to be done. A good editor is also going to be able to look at a character or look at a story that a writer gives them and tell them, hey, this story is completely off brand for whatever title it is you're working on. And especially now in this age of comics where writers seem to be more prominent than artists, maybe again, that's too hard for editors today to do, but they need to find their backbone, and they need to start talking to their professionals and say, hey, listen, this is the industry we're working in. This is the title, and what you've given me does not measure up to what the tone of the book or the standards that we've set as a company. I mean, at the end of the day, creating comic books, as fun as it is still a job. And it's a job that needs to be done well. And right now, I can't say that that's the case. And again, I don't necessarily fault all the artists out there, because there are probably artists out there who we look at and we don't like the type of artwork that they're churning out. But maybe that's because their editorial staff is not holding them to their levels, not making them put out the level of artwork that they're capable of doing. They're putting out rush work. They're putting out work that's lazy, again, that's low effort, and that maybe if these artists were pressed, they could do a better job. I don't know. That's just me speculating, because unfortunately I'm not at the editorial level of the major studios, but I do recognize that wherever this error is happening, it's probably the editorial level where all of this stuff is getting slipped through. And maybe if some of these editors would start developing a little bit of backbone and actually starting to come down on these creators and treat them like professionals, maybe the caliber of product that they end up with at the end of the day would be improved, and the comics industry could finally start finding its way out of this murky depth that it seems to have put itself in. But again, this is all just my opinion and just me as an observer looking in. I want to know what you guys think. What do you think about these artistic and story shortcomings? Do you really just blame the creators out there, or do you think that the comic books have an editor problem and maybe they need to start sinking a bit of resource into getting some people who can, I don't know, I don't want to say crack the whip behind these guys, but at least do something, create an environment where something gets done and a bit higher level of a product starts getting churned out. I think these writers and artists are probably capable of it, but I think they maybe need somebody back there that's going to push them a little harder and make them develop those skills and bring us something that is the caliber of a professional creator, not just somebody out there who's drawing comics. But I want to know what you guys think. So let's talk about this in the comment section below. I'm sure there's probably people out there who have some opinions on this, and I do want to hear them. So I'll be looking forward to engaging with you guys there, and I'm going to leave it here, and I'll talk to you in the next one. See you then. Bye.